Okay. Hello, I'm Matt Lighty. This is just like an audio version with maybe, I guess, some additional notes, director commentary, if you will. Going over a little timeline I made, which is an expounded upon version from like a year ago, give or take, which is the post will be in the description, but it's key milestones and dates in the evolution of Path of Exile, a semi-comprehensive study of grinding gear games' recent journey. It's like a little research paper that goes over a bunch of dates and just like key moments that not necessarily like there's no goal with me compiling this. I just find it sometimes more useful when trying to think about a complex subject. And just to have all the pieces of the puzzle in front of me, and it's an easy way to like reference certain things. So I kind of have it like that. I did as I cited all my work as best I could. Might be a little bit aggressive. I have links to everything that I reference with quotes and whatnot, and the focus is on the period of time starting from the beginning of the relationship with Tencent through their like Chinese networks, ending just kind of as of last week, not as a point of anything happened last week, more just that's when I decided to do this was starting a couple days ago. So I'm sure I missed stuff. I kind of crowdsourced some people to proofread, and as a byproduct, they reminded me of a couple key events, so I added those. But we'll just go through it, and I'll just kind of expound on some of the things that are kind of fascinating. So 2015 is where this one begins. They've been around longer than that, but I just kind of started there because Grinding Gear Games, the developer of Path of Exile, explores the possibility of launching their game, PoE1, in China, recognizing the potential of the Chinese gaming market. At the time, it was RPGs representing $5.5 billion, which was like 40%-ish of the entire PC MMO market. So clearly there was like financial reason to get invested. So that was like an obvious thing. Cut to 2 years later, which is the inverse of when Grinding Gear Games gathered in China for Path of Exile China to launch its beta. Game director Chris Wilson remarks, for 2 years. So it's like that's the cut back to 2015. For 2 years, we've been working with Tencent to bring Path of Exile to China. Some notable attendees at the event, which was the Shanghai like promo gathering, include Richard Taylor, who is the founder and CEO of What a Workshop. Very cool. If you ever checked out What a Workshop, they do a lot of amazing sculptures and props and things for movies. David Brevik, who was the founder of Blizzard North and one of the creators of Diablo, and Livy Liu, which is the then project manager at Tencent for Path of Exile. Again, these are all hyperlinks, but you could see like what the event is. The actual launch was in Shanghai in a church. If you never saw this stuff, a lot of this stuff, if you just are new to PoE or just really don't give a shit about what happens behind the curtains, most of this might be new to you. And again, none of it is like, I even wrote like the events below aren't bad. They're not good. They just happened. So that's why I'm doing it. Here was the Innocence display from Act 5. Very cool. They had a huge stained glass display. It was inside of a big church. So there's Chris. There is the What a Workshop guy. There's Brevik, the Diablo Blizzard North founder. So some cool stuff. There's a launch video. That was a key thing. And then cut to the next year, April 1st, ironically April Fool's. Path of Exile's player count is roughly at 40,000 on Steam, and reviews are marked as positive. The Steam numbers have kind of always been represented as a similar, like 2-to-1 count for player base overall. So if there's 40,000 people playing on Steam, there's probably about the same off Steam, is what they've said, not including console, just on PC. And then I added a little fun quip, which is an IGN article rates Path of Exile a 7.6 out of 10. Calls it the free-to-play action RPG version of owning a vintage car. Whatever the fuck that means. I have no idea what that even means. The article is kind of dog water. But I just thought that quote was fascinating. April 13th, so a couple weeks later, Tencent Holding becomes the majority shareholder in Grinding Gear Games. So this is three years after planting the seed of a relationship, purchasing about 87% of the company. The three co-founders, Chris Wilson, Jonathan, Eric, holding the remaining 13-ish%. Two of the co-founders also sat on the board, so 5 people in total, which was Chris and Jonathan, alongside 3 appointed by Tencent, Ming, Gang Chan, and Brent Irvine. These are not the same guy, so I don't know if this could just be total conjecture. You'd have to look this up, but the project manager from Tencent name was Livy Liu, and then the person that was placed on the board is Ming Liu. So I'm curious if they're like related or spouses or something. But yeah, I'd have to do more research into that. It's totally no bearing on anything, but fun fact. I did add this per people's request. Like, I think it was Muffin who said it, but just because legally I was patching the March 11th, 2019 benchmark to have the, on March 11th, 2019, Path of Exile, next new stash to be added unique tab. Nice little meme there. Cut to May 20th, same year. Chris Wilson is a keynote speaker at Game Developers Conference, discussing his ambitions of, quote, designing Path of Exile to be played forever. Chris mentions the idea of weekly patches, as opposed to like a more quarterly cycle at the time, and frequent updates. And he quotes, and I'm paraphrasing, estimates that if they were to manage 10,000 concurrent users, that would grant financial stability for Grinding Gear Games at the time. So in 2019, if they said they had 10,000 people playing the game, and they were like 10,000 people who were playing concurrently daily, that would be probably enough on average to sustain what would be their entire company at the time. The actual interview and whole thing is pretty interesting. It's, even though retrospectively this was all worthless now as far as in relation to Path of Exile, ironically, but as just if you're like into game development and the idea of making a game design for perpetuity, it's interesting. It's an interesting watch. Fun that the comments are from recent times. It's been a long day without you, my friend. So even now people are grieving for the, now lost Chris Wilson. Although we don't know that yet in the timeline. We're not there yet, so we'll hold on to that. But yeah, so 2019, October now, Path of Exile China standalone client continues differentiating itself with the parent game as it moves forward with pay-to-win optionality. There was a split amongst the clients, initially from the Garena to the regular PoE. Then when PoE China existed, different office, same IP, obviously being Path of Exile, but totally different client with a totally different set of rules and regulations, including pay-to-win aspects, which is much more widely accepted in the Asian market than it is in the Western market. So, like, it's frowned upon and oftentimes against, almost always actually, against terms of service in Western games, but in games in Asia, it's much more of an accepted practice, with the idea of, like, why would I spend 40 hours in game when I could work for 8 hours IRL and just purchase the thing in game, kind of, which is like, I get, that's just like a difference in culture. But examples include pets to pick up item in game, ability to buy back experiences on death, alternate league settings with enhanced loot, etc. I included some examples. This guy has a good YouTube video going over it, but there's some forum examples included if you ever want to look into that. This guy's video is from forever ago. Ni hao. But he goes over a lot of the differences. There's like a fucking laundry list of things that are different. So, yeah, it's interesting if you care about what the client looks like at the time and what that is. That's a snapshot from the past. So, cut to November 2019. Path of Exile 2 is announced as a campaign expansion to Path of Exile 1. It's promised to address most every issue in PoE. PoE 2 is initially slated as Content Update 4.0, whatever that would have been. Quote, Path of Exile 2 is a new 7X story that is available alongside the original Path of Exile 1 campaign. Both the old and new storyline lead to the same shared Atlas endgame. Path of Exile 2 retains all expansion content that has been created over the last 6 years and introduces a new skill system, ascendancy, engines, yada yada yada. That was the initial pitch. Same day, Chris Wilson speaks at ExileCon, which is when this was all announced, the 15th, stating, for years we wanted to make a sequel to Path of Exile. The problem with that is sequels split a community between two products. It's also hard for a sequel to compete with the amount of content and features that the original game has. We've just spent 6 years making expansions to Path of Exile, so imagine if we released a Path of Exile 2, and it was just a bare campaign with none of that extra content. That would be a sad shell of an action RPG. This is the quote that gets tossed around a lot, because it was like a genie predicting something, like pulling a rabbit out of a hat of this is exactly what has happened. Whether, if saying something like a sad shell, that's up to interpretation, but the actual logistical infrastructure of that occurred. So it's like for Chris to pull it out at that time and saying, like, this is exactly what we don't want to happen, and then boom, that's what they decide. Whether it's good or not, that's irrelevant for now. It's just like, that's wild. Cut to December 13th. This says Settlers League. This was a typo. Twitter doesn't let you fucking edit things. It's supposed to be Metamorph, but that's fine. It this section references the fact that expansions were on 3-month cycles. This is the last time that really happened. Notable exceptions include Legacy League with their double extension, and then references to prior to 2015. There used to be split leagues, which people don't really know about. So there used to be, when a league came out, which was twice a year, give or take, there was a hardcore and a softcore league that ran concurrently. So examples, the last one was Warbands and Tempest. So like Warbands was for softcore and Tempest was for hardcore. So if you wanted to play Tempest, you had to play hardcore. That was the way they did it. It was kind of a funky way, but then as hardcore fell out of favor and the game became more popular, the split leagues kind of went the way of the dodo. November 15th, 2019. Why are these dates a little bit crankled? That's fine. I can't edit shit because it's fucking terrible. They released Path of Exile 2's first trailer and announced the beta at the end of 2020. Consistent with the November 15th announcement, PoE 2 is described as a new 7-act storyline with the tagline at the end, 1 game, 2 campaigns. This is one of the meme lines you'll see echoed quite often. It's a funny one, obviously retrospectively, which is obviously it's not 1 game, 2 campaigns, but it's actually not even 7 acts. It's a 6-act story, I believe, is what it's supposed to be. We actually currently have 3 acts that are in 2 difficulties, but it's supposed to be, I think, 6 acts. I think they just called an act altogether, but who knows? Maybe we'll get another act soon. I have to pour myself a drink. I got myself apple cider, and I didn't expect to be talking this much, and I realized this thing is very long, and I'm going to be speaking for a while, so I'm going to get parched. All right, February 28th, 2020. Now we're in the 20s. This is when COVID hit, and the pandemic hits New Zealand by March 26th, so about within the month, basically. The country is in a nationwide lockdown, like many others, and the majority of all office work goes remote. So this is like all this, the whole thing was all these plans and setup for Path of Exile 2. We're working on making this big expansion, the revitalization of a game. Not that it's, it was dwindling at the time, but just like that whole thing. And then it's just like, boom, COVID. So this was the ultimate monkey, the greatest monkey wrench in gaming history tossed into the plan. April 9th, 2021, they released the trailer. Beta testing was supposed to be scheduled for 2024. And then 2022 in February now, they announced the Kyrix Vault Pass. This is just the first time that's ever happened. It's Path of Exile's take on a battle pass for $30. And it comes with the tagline ensuring, quote, access to Kyrix Vault Pass since cosmetic skins offer no gameplay advantage over other players. Now, I have never really done a deep dive into this, but I would definitely, there's nothing about the Kyrix Vault Pass has been pay to win. However, there is absolutely things that were offered in the Kyrix Vault Pass that are gameplay advantages. And there's an example of that being a flask skin that points towards an enemy, which is really goofy and might not be asking, Lighty, how is that really important, whatever. But imagine you're doing like hard mode Cirrus or a boss where the boss is off-screen, has off-screening capabilities, and knowing the boss's positioning is a mechanical advantage in game. That's a very obvious leap of logic, but it's like this flask skin that is only acquired from a Kyrix Vault Pass that is a non-repeatable microtransaction through that battle pass for that one time period is the only way to have it so it shows you where the enemy is in the map, effectively. Like, it lines a tether from you to the enemy. So it's just, that's an interesting one. You could definitely construe that as a gameplay advantage. I wouldn't remotely call it pay to win, but there's something about that is gameplay advantagey. So, we move on. August 25th, 2022. Grinding Gear Games releases news post, quote, "What happened with items?" From Chris Wilson explaining the change to item quantity and rarity being, quote, "not properly communicated amidst balance issues during Lake of Kalandra." This was the great IQ, IR kerfuffle, get your MF gear ready kind of era arch nemesis within this year. Chris goes on to mention an alternate version of the game with extreme item scarcity in relation to the IQ, IR thing, currently internally called hard mode. Later we know this as ruthless. Very funnily enough, so the day after this was posted, the day of, within the 24-hour period, previous streamer, Path of Exile, Path of Math, was banned for staff abuse, calling game director Chris Wilson a really cool guy. He didn't actually say really cool guy. He says something a little bit different that I'm not allowed to say, otherwise I'm going to get staff abused. But if the links in the description, for this is all a very known meme, but I just think it's like, this happened, and then bam, the same day. I assume it's in retaliation of this is what that occurred. But yeah, we move on. So August 23rd, 2023, Grinding Gear Games community lead, Bex, lovable Bex, leaves for a position at Riot Games amidst inappropriate engagement from social media users, harassment, that sort of stuff. Future GG communication is delivered by the community_team account from now on, and the community leader role is left effectively vacant or not public facing. So we used to have a very open communication. We, the public, or even some people who are like, do YouTube and stream, we could just like message. I still have messages from Bex on Twitter, I think even. Yeah, so okay. So it's like, used to talk to her about, I had any questions, I'd just shoot her an email. That level of communication basically left with Bex. Since then, every email is community team. The messages that they do are from community team. Used to see a lot of messages from like Chris, his account on Reddit, or Bex's account on Reddit. Those are gone. It's just GGG community team. It's all very, what's the word? It's like sterilized, It's all very big corporate now. Not that it's a bad thing. It's just a decision they made in light of people's inappropriate engagement through social media. Basically, you're harassing specific people. I get it, protect your people, but it's just a bummer to have lost that connection, that lifeline to the game. August 26, 2023. I'm sipping. Grinding Gear Games announces that Path of Exile 2 will be a separate game from Path of Exile 1, claiming both PoE 1 and PoE 2 will run alternating 3-month league cycles, totaling 8 leagues per year. Chris Wilson, still the game director at the time, mentions during Gamescom that that, quote, intention with PoE 1 is to carry on basically what we've been doing so far, which is quarterly expansions. Which is funny because even 3 years prior to this, they were already way off the schedule of quarterly expansions, so that wasn't even being, like, that promise for the future wasn't even being kept at the present. He goes on to say, Path of Exile 1 is a separate product from PoE 2, so we don't need to allow PoE 2's ongoing development to affect it, which is saying that the development of PoE 2 should not affect PoE 1. Now, we know that whether it's a good or a bad thing, again, to just objectively be false, obviously that's been the case. They've admitted it since then, but this is the timestamp for the claim when that was made. Apple cider. Okay, March 6th, 2024. Grinding Gear Games 2023 financial statements are disclosed. These are all public, by the way. Every public company has to disclose their financials the following year. And there's noting an unannounced change in game director position. So on that statement, the game director position was not Chris Wilson. And Chris Wilson then commented on this post on Reddit, stating, I haven't stepped down as director of GGG, but there was a paperwork mistake where I was missed off the list when the annual return was filed this week. We complained about it yesterday, and it should be corrected in the next few days. So that was him saying, I'm still the game director. This was just a clerical error. Fantastic. That same month, The remaining three co-founders of Grinding Gear Games, including Chris Wilson, sell their existing shares to Tencent, and the subsidiary then Sixjoy Hong Kong Limited, making them being Sixjoy and then by extension Tencent, the sole owner of Grinding Gear Games. Cut to July 26, 2024. Patch 3.25 releases, which is Settlers League, which is the still current active league as of now. We're going to jump to the future tangentially to the wiki post, but the end of Settlers was delayed multiple times due to the release of early access for PoE2. There have been a few events held during its extended period. This is like happening now. Necro Settlers event was held from then to then, and Legacy of Frisia event was held immediately after, which is still active as we speak. So we are still in the Settlers League, but we have had a couple events in the interim, probably more to come. 3 days later, a bug related to economic abuse involving scrying and a, quote, specific scarab, that was what they said on their specific post, being used to get an excessive amount of divine orbs. GGG's Neon stated, "We've locked all the wealth generated from this to prevent it from getting into the economy while we decide what to do, but we will not allow this wealth to re-enter the economy," taking like a very strong stance on this level of bug abuse. References to future change in, quote, specific policies regarding bug abuse were mentioned, but nothing was codified. There's been no change of the bug abuse policy since then. Just a kind of, this was like a public slap on the wrist for those people. And if you do bug abuse, there will be repercussions, based off of this event. October 28th, near Halloween 2024. Path of Exile 2 delayed an additional 3 weeks with a new early access launch date of December 6, 2024. GGG explains, quote, "One of the key promises we made is that all of your microtransactions will work across both PV1 and PV2, and they have to get everything perfect so that nobody loses anything they paid for." Meaning them being Path of Exile does not want us, the players, to lose anything they paid for, which is an interesting, what's the word? Maybe like a morality claim, saying like we want to ensure that the players, the customers, the consumers get what we've paid for, and all our microtransactions will be accessible, based off of that post in October. Cut to a couple days later, Path of Exile 1 Settlers League is extended, we know that, through early 2025, postponing a 3.26 league, while GG focuses on the early access of PoE2. Quote, GG says, "Path of Exile 2 in early access this year is a very important milestone for us. We've been working very hard to make it happen." They go on to say, "We made a decision to not launch the 3.26 expansion for PoE1 this year, being 2024 last year. We're looking to announce the new league in early 2025, thinking late January." We know that didn't happen. Settlers League will be extended to early 2025. We are in April and it's still active. And then cut to November 7th. Necro Settlers event begins. This is like a holdover event with including the Settlers League content, as well as a rotating version of the Lantern of Aramor from the Necropolis League with only positive modifiers. Very fun league. Would have recommended. The event runs concurrently with Settlers remaining active, as Settlers is the, quote, parent league, effectively, as events are bounced off of it. November 18th, 2024. Support customers report long delays on receiving physical supporter pack items such as t-shirts, hoodies, plushies, etc. Some reporting items arriving several months or years after purchase. This has been an ongoing thing where when you purchase a high-tier supporter pack, so you get like a t-shirt, a hoodie, whatever, and there have been historical issues with that, and there was a proposed fix, and the fix has caused other issues, and this is their other issues. So GG reports that, quote, "We are now working with a new shipment company to ensure your physical merchandise gets to you without delays. In order to provide a better shipping experience to our players, we will now be charging for the delivery of physical items. The previous cost of shipping physical merchandise was included in supported pack. So if you purchased a $480 supported pack that came with a t-shirt and a hoodie and a beanie, you do not have to pay for the shipping of that previously, because that was just eaten up in the cost of the supported pack. That is now not the case, and now you have to pay for shipping. The issue is, there's a couple issues. The issues arise due to the new partnered shipping company being US-based So the new estimated cost of supported packs have skyrocketed when it comes to shipping physical goods to various countries. There's been some historical top-end examples of shipping to Germany costing upwards of $80, or Australia being $132. Ironic, because New Zealand, where the game's held, is close to this number as well. And on top of that, some customers report issues with customs fees, like the European VAT tax, the value-added tax, on top of the higher-end shipping costs. I've seen some claims of customers reporting a wide range from something as low as €2 to upwards of €120 in a varied cost of claimed items. The additional new shipping cost compounded with a customs VAT fee, which has led to some customers reporting in excess of $200 in additional fees for physical merchandise. So you could purchase a $300 supported pack and have to pay, depending on regionality, upwards of $200 in additional fees to receive the items for your $300 supported pack, which is something to think about. The shipping, you could see the cost of, I believe, beforehand. The customs fees, there is some sort of collaboration with GGG attempting to help you have the proper forms, but that's out of their hands as far as paying for it. Who knows? Moving on. November 1st, 2024. GGG announces early access for Path of Exile 2 will cost a minimum of $30 unless lifetime support exceeds $480. The threshold is based on purchases made on one platform. Cross-platform spending is ignored. This is a strange thing, but it's just a strange thing. The continued claim is that PoE2 will be free upon release, and a full release date TBD. Path of Exile 1 is obviously free. Path of Exile 2 currently is not free. Costs $30 unless you have spent about $500 in your life. The cross-platform thing, meaning if you spent $479 on a PlayStation and then you spent $50 on PC, you would not get a PoE2 key based off of their forum post. Which, I mean, maybe you could email them and beg, but yeah, the cross-platform thing is a bummer, but that was the case, and I'm still of the mind of it being free to play on launch is speculative, but as of now, it's obviously still costs $30 in early access, and is slated to be free to play when it comes out. December 6th, yes, 2024. This is the 3-week pushback date, and the full PoE2 early access begins. Over 1 million copies sold initially at $30 a supported pack minimum. Some of them could have been more. Over 500,000 concurrent players on Steam, so double that for client, upwards of 1 million players. Over 1 million viewers on Twitch. They've breaking every financial record, every player count record, every viewer metric. It was just like gangbusters as far as could have been going. Better than ever expected, publicity-wise. That comes with a lot of baggage, but that was a big old splash in the pond. They write and claim the duration of the PoE2's early access reported to, quote, last as long as needed. We expect at least 6 months. I expect closer to 24 months, but we will see. That's going to be at least a little bit. Cut to the next day. Some issues arise over microtransaction porting as players discover roughly 98% of existing microtransactions in Path of Exile franchise are not available upon release in PoE2. GG remarks, not all microtransactions are available to use yet. Many request MTXs in all stash shops will be initially available, but due to a massive amount of microtransactions, we're still in the process of adding them all to PoE2. So many of them will be marked as, quote, unavailable in your cosmetic tab. The GG community team claims, quote, during early access, we'll be working through the backlog and making them all available. They will be, during the early access, every single microtransaction will be available. All available. That is the claim. And we know that although they could not get them to be ported now, we saw in the earlier MTX post that they're every single one, and that they quote, paraphrase here, but the quote's up top, that they do not want us to lose what we paid for. That is a big part of it. However, there was some player confusion over discrepancies with the map tab versus tablet itemization. PoE 2 technically didn't have maps. It had tablets, which were faux maps for all intents and purposes, but it prevented players from using their existing map tabs to store tablets, as that was not in-game yet. So, a little bit of a bummer there. Cut to 4 days after launch, December 10th, 2024. Support email responses are delayed. The studio says, quote, they are currently hiring new people for support to be able to handle the increased load so they can decrease the backlog as soon as possible. The estimated backlog was over 500,000 email requests since PoE 2's release. GG acknowledging that players, quote, deserve better customer service than what they've been providing, while promising to do more and citing the situation has also been exacerbated by technical limitations, something that they've been historically plagued by in the past, server issues, etc. They almost always work through them, but it's definitely a big old clog, and this is what I meant by the monkey wrench of having such a popular release, is that you get a million emails, and that's a bummer. January 29th, 2025. Jonathan Rogers, the game director, releases a YouTube video titled a message to PoE 1 players, where he outlines the plans to postpone Path of Exile 1's updates indefinitely to focus on Path of Exile 2's full release. This is where he talks about, it's kind of we make the joke, it's like the BP We're Sorry video, but he goes over just that the resources are being diverted to PoE 2. PoE 1 is on standby until PoE 2 is in a place they feel comfortable with. This is a kind of a funny aside, and I'll give a little bit of backstory to it, but January 31st, 2025, 11th Hour Games, Last Epic announces release of Season 2, Tomb of the Erased, to be released on April 2nd, 2025. This is Last Epic's game of their second season. The reason I note this is because we'll reference it later on, and I'll make a little story when we get to that point. February 10th, per community feedback, Path of Exile 1 and 2's subreddits have been split, reinforcing the separation among or of Path of Exile users. Previously, each subreddit, PoE 1 was basically the only subreddit. PoE 2 just wasn't being used, and the forced segregation has caused the content to hopefully be separated. Although the moderation team has basically not been doing much of that, because if you were to go on Path of Exile Reddit right now, I bet you there is post about PoE 2. Ziz interview summaries, but it's about PoE 2, but yeah, there's going to be PoE 2 stuff. It's almost always PoE 2. There's one, PoE 2. Yeah, so it's just like the level of actual moderation that the mod team is doing is it's kind of whatever. I feel like they're half-assing it. The whole point was to, split the conversations, but they seem to not really give a shit. Anyway, 9 days later, February 19th, Chris Wilson, noted as ceased director, as co-founder of Jonathan Rogers, assumed the position of game director at Grinding Gear Games. So this is when Chris Wilson steps down and Jonathan Rogers ascends to manhood as the now full-time game director of Grinding Gear Games. Ceased director, so fucking weird. That's what it says in the document, like ceased director, like he died or something. He's not dead. It's just weird, man. So yeah, it's a weird one that they say. That's, I guess, just like a New Zealand thing, but ceased director is so goofy to me. But yeah, Chris Wilson is gone. Jonathan Rogers is in. The next day, Necro Settlers event ends, and Legacy of Thracia event begins. In this event, the original 19 senses are replaced with more unusual senses that are, quote, wacky ideas that never quite made it off the brainstorm board. And the Atlas Pageantry is replaced with the Idol system. This is the second event where Settlers is the parent league. March 4th, the event is now extended by a month until April 23rd. GG comments, we would also like to share a tentative timeline for the 3.26 expansion. We're looking to launch the expansion in June, so you might expect us to begin talking about it sometime after the end of Legacy of Thracia. We have solid plans for 3.26, and we're sure you'll love it. Stay tuned. That is good to hear. March 27th, 2025, GG announces Path of Exile 2's Dawn of the Hunt to release the same weekend as 11th Hour Games' Last Epic. So the Erased League from Last Epic they decided to release their game on the same weekend. 11th Hour Games then moved their launch date, being pressured by PoE 2 for the Dawn of the Hunt Point 2 expansion, away from GGG's precious little PoE 2. This is funny because those who have played PoE many years ago knows that at one point in time, Path of Exile pushed back its league launch to what they said as, quote, allow players to experience the joy of playing Cyberpunk when the game came out, as if that was like remotely even a thing that people gave a shit about. It was like, I don't know the crossover Venn diagram there, but people who were excited to play Cyberpunk and then people who play Path of Exile habitually on League launch, I do not think was a crossing Venn diagram. But they seem to have no problem shitting all over their only real competition in the lesser ARPG space. It's like they got big enough to say, fuck off, Last Epic. You know, we're the Cyberpunks now, which I just thought was funny, like them bullying their second season. You could call it something else, but to me it's just like just them bullying him out of their weekend and forcing them to move, which is like, they could have picked any date. So that's so funny, just given the Cyberpunk historical meme, you know? And we're getting close to now. Losing my voice for some reason. What happens? You don't stream for a month. Path of Exile 2, that was the April 4th. Dawn of the Hunt launches along patch point 2 with a bunch of negative public reception. The Steam reviews then tank to the mixed value, which is, if you've ever seen anything on Steam, mixed may as well be negative because it's a hard breaker to reach for the first time since the launch of the early access. So the Steam reviews are mixed. I don't know if they're still mixed. Let's find out. But they were as of a couple days ago. Nope, we're still in mixed hell, unfortunately. That is 40% of the recent ones are positive. So that's not great. So that just goes to show the people who are playing PoE2, the Dawn of the Hunt, this is really just based off that patch, don't like it on average. Bummer. A couple days later, 2 days later actually as of now, and 3 days later in the future, we mark the 2-year Crucible League anniversary. And it also marks the largest delay gap in Path of Exile 1's league release cycle. So this is like hypothetically, if you were to continue the trend of their proposed initial release schedule from 2019, which is when they were on schedule, so 6 years ago when they were on schedule, this would have made, it means we've missed 5 full league delay cycles. So we have missed 15 months of PoE 1 leagues worth of content because of delays or extensions or being behind schedule. So we've missed 5 hypothetical leagues by this timeline based off of their standards, all obviously cited from previous posts. So, but despite the continued delays in Path of Exile's content, the player count and concurrent player metrics are continuing to trend upward in parallel with PoE 2's early access. So PoE 2 still doing good on Steam. PoE 1 still doing good on Steam. Numbers roughly doubled for base clients. So overall, it's still doing fine. It's just a lot of people are complaining in a lot of different directions. I'm sure myself included many times. Not in this post as much, but this is just more of a factual thing. So, conclusion. We've looked at fucking so much stuff here. What does all this mumbo jumbo mean, right? It just means that both versions of Path of Exile are objectively successful and played by hundreds of thousands of people daily. Your opinions of them, are totally your own, and any inferences you draw from all of these facts, quotes, citations, and dates is kind of up to you. I've personally, now I'm speaking from me, Matt Lighty, have been historically very vocal that I think PoE 2, in its secondary inception, was a dog shit idea. The initial idea, back when it was PoE 4.0, was a great idea. This is really bad. I don't think this is really bad, but business-wise, I'm straight up wrong because we know that it made a lot of money and is doing very well. So that's me talking as a player, not as a businessman. And I'm not a businessman, I'm a player. So that's an opinion. But everything else here is pretty much a fact. So you could make your own inferences from that. I have no clue about, whatever. But I guess a good part of what I talk about here is if you have any sense of how did we get here or what led to XYZ, or what, if you feel like something came out of left field, it's all been pretty on trend with a certain way they've been going about things, and this kind of highlights, I guess, or goes over that in a way. And yeah, maybe I'll probably amend this next year in the end of 2026 to kind of catch up to all of 2025 and 2026, because I like to keep the sacred timeline rolling. But yeah, that's about it. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments below. This is more just for those who wanted maybe additional information on the post thingy, and then like we don't have to hear any like little bullshit in their stories between the times. But yeah, that's it. This has been 40 minutes of me rambling, so enjoy it. If you want to read it, it's in the description below. Otherwise, I'll catch you on stream or in a video. Okay, I'm Matt Lighty, and enjoy playing PoE 1 or PoE 2, and I'll see you when I see you.